Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great, Eric. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Looking nice and springy outside. We're in daylight savings time now, so it's light out after 7 o'clock. It's great.
Yeah, sun is shining, spring is in the air. We've only got 2 weeks left until the official start of spring.
Yeah, 10 days. Today's the 11th.
So everything's going good there. But today we're going to talk about something that touches on self-esteem, it touches on time management, it touches on focus. It's actually a really big part of your business and your life, which is knowing how and when to say no to things. There are so many of us that, we want to help people so much that, we forget that no is an option and we tend to overload ourselves. So today we're going to talk about knowing when to say no and how to make it easier for yourself to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a fine science and so on. But as you mentioned, I mean, one of the keys is your own time management. And the other thing is relationships. I think one of the biggest hindrances to you saying no to somebody is well, what's that person going to think about me for doing this? When the bottom line is the person that you're responsible to is in the mirror, and you can't control how other people react towards you. And the other thing that you got to look at is everybody wants to solve their own problems as fast as possible, so they're always going to be asking for help for people to ease their burdens in an attempt to free up their own time. So we're all in this game together as far as asking. And so we also have to really be cooperative in looking at each other and the ability to say no.
Exactly. And the requests are always going to come. So you need to understand your own capabilities and your own workload in order to really know, is this something I can say yes to? And in fact, most of us need to switch our focus so that yes is not always our default. Your first thought should be, well, can I do this? Not, of course I can, but is this something that fits into my core competencies? Is this something that fits into my schedule? Because you can't just keep giving of yourself. So the better you know yourself, the better you know what you're good at, the easier it becomes to say no. Because if something is not in your core competencies, one, you shouldn't be taking it on. And two, it's a very simple no to say, because you can honestly say, you know what, I'm not really good at that. Let's find somebody else who is to help you out.
Yeah, it's really, really important to take a look at what the task is and what your own workload is. And the bottom line is, if you do say yes and you have a to-do list that's 2 miles long and you can't get anything done anyway, you're only going to damage your relationship with the other person by saying yes and not being able to come through for them. So that's one of the big things as far as taking a look at time management. So
Yeah, I mean, certainly one of the reasons that most people find it hard to say no is because they want to be liked, they want to be of value to this other person. But if you say yes and you can't follow through, either because it's not something you're good at or you don't have the time to get to it, or it's something that you would have to put off for quite a while, that doesn't build the relationship better than no did. In fact, no would be to both of your advantages, because one, you're not taking on more work than you can handle, And two, you're not leading them on so that they're thinking it's getting done and you're putting it off because you don't have the time.
Yeah, and getting back to being upfront, obviously, we talked a little bit about the inability to say no could stem from your fear as far as being rejected or fearing conflict with the person you're saying no to, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, whether you say yes or no, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to make that person feel better, making them feel the way they want to feel. So, yes or no is not always the right answer, and you don't really know that until you give the answer. And again, the most important thing is to respect yourself first, and people are going to respect you for saying no, especially with the proper reason, a whole lot more than they would if you say yes and you can't come through for them. And if the person does keep pushing and pushing and pushing, even though you're giving perfect reasons for doing that, that's somebody you're probably not going to care about having a great relationship with in the first place.
Right. And that's something that a lot of business owners deal with in the early days of their business when saying yes is almost automatic because they're afraid to turn down business. But very often, if somebody comes to you and it's not really what you do, or this is somebody that you really shouldn't be doing business with because the effort is going to far outweigh what you're making from the job, you have to turn down that job. And for new businesses, that's really difficult. They don't know, where the next piece of business is going to come from. So that fear really forces them to say yes. But if you can get over that fear and say no when it's appropriate, it frees you up to get the business that you should actually be going after.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about business strategic planning, and like you're saying, most people, even businesses that have been around a long time, their philosophy is to grab every order that they can get. Whereas smart business owners are going to take a look at their client mix, how easy it is to work with people, and classify the client types that they want to go after. This is for business development purposes, operations, and that kind of thing. And you also need to identify the types of clients that you just don't want, and if you can have that down as a strategy, when somebody calls you up asking for something or whatever, and they don't fit into that, you can just say, "Hey, my niche is really here. I'm really not good at serving businesses of your type," and they're going to appreciate that, unless they're looking for a handout or something for nothing, in which case you don't want to be working with them anyway.
Exactly. And in fact, I just had a conversation with a couple of business owners where we were talking about when we don't want to take a client on. Sometimes no simply isn't enough. And what we've had to do is actually jack up our prices to where we think they can't afford to hire us. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes you tell them that higher price and they go, okay, sure. But it's one way of trying to get no across.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, before you do that, check their credit rating before you quote the high prices.
Right.
So, but yeah, for businesses, I mean, obviously, and personally, on the personal side, it comes down to your time management. It comes down to what you like to do, what you don't like to do. It's really, really important to be working on that person in the mirror first, or that business in the mirror first, because that really drives everything. And, as we said, people and other businesses are going to respect you a whole lot more for being honest and upfront with them than they will if you just say yes to them and don't come through. It's worse to say yes and not perform than it is to say no in the first place. Far worse.
Right. And there's also external factors. If you say yes that you're going to help somebody and then don't do it, yes, the relationship is damaged, but you could also inadvertently be causing difficulty for that person that you may not be able to get them out of. And this is actually an extreme version, but I'm dealing with a situation right now with my mother in law. She needed help dealing with Social Security. and she turned to her local congressperson who she works for. And the congressperson said, "Yes, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. No problems. I'll take care of it." Well, as it turned out, the congressperson didn't do anything. So Social Security actually denied her claim, which she's completely justified in getting. But now we have to start the process again. And this person that said they were going to help did a lot of damage by saying yes and not following through. So in this particular case, it would have been much better for my mother-in-law if the person had simply said, there's nothing I can do right now. Maybe we can find somebody else to help you.
Yeah, which really it brings up an important point too. I mean, if you are the one who is asking instead of the one who's saying yes or no, it's really, really important if you're asking somebody else's help to have a timed list of checkpoints to make sure that they are taking care of what they're saying they're going to take care of, instead of just saying, "Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're taking care of this problem for me," and not following up on it at all. It's really incumbent upon the person who's requesting the help to make sure that they're checking up on that. Obviously, in a nice way, but if you want to make sure it's getting done, it still is your responsibility to get it done.
Right. You need to balance checking up on them and making sure things are getting done with not being pushy. If someone's doing you a favor, you don't want to be constantly nagging them and pushing them. So it's a fine line to walk, but it can be done.
Yeah, and it's as simple as just saying when you're asking them, say, "Hey, can I check back with you on such and such a date?" So you always have
Right.
a touch point planned.
That's a perfect way to do it. And what most people need to realize is there's nothing wrong with no. In fact, in a lot of situations, you want no. Not just when somebody's asking you something, but if you're a business in your sales process, no is certainly better than we'll see or maybe. Obviously, in sales, you want to get to yes, but getting to no is just as important because it means you don't have to waste your time on something that's not going to happen.
Yeah, as everybody out there knows, I usually download a couple of articles and take a look at different things, and there's one that just says the advantages of saying no. And first of all, saying no often means that you're putting yourself first. You become the number one priority of your own life, and you have to be there. And then it also means that you're choosing your life's balance instead of letting other people control just because they need something, and all you want to just be the nice person for everybody. And that you are honoring your own personal boundaries, things that you can and you can't do, and so on and so forth. And that's the bottom line. The more you say yes, if you say yes unconditionally, you're really giving up control of your life. And it's not going to help you, and it's definitely not going to help the other people, because eventually, whatever you're trying to do is just going to blow up all over the place because you'll have too much to do and you won't be getting anything done.
Right. And it really comes down to your self esteem. Because the main reason, according to a number of studies I've seen, that people don't say no is because they want to be liked, they want to be accepted, and they think the way to do this is doing favors for everybody and always being there for them. Well, it's great to be there for people and to help people out, but there's a limit to what you can do, both in terms of hours in the day, in terms of the energy you have, and actually physical limitations. So,
Yeah, a lot of it gets back to, again, your own self-esteem. That's something that you really have to work on yourself. We talk often about developing and maintaining a positive mindset, and if you can sit down and work on developing that, and some of the tools are obviously working on your gratitude journal, your victory log, which is all the great things that you've ever accomplished in your life. There's so much good going on in your life, and if you put that down on paper and look at that a lot, you're going to realize the type of person you are. And the other thing is your own personal feelings from the gut is a whole lot more important than what people say on the outside, because the world outside is mostly negative, and the bottom line is it's okay to like yourself, to pat yourself on the back for doing well, and you're going to know if you're being genuine or not. And it's so important to work on that for yourself and with other people. And so, one of the things you can do with the other people that you're dealing with, that you're saying no to, is to acknowledge the good in them and just say, look, I just can't do this right now, but I really appreciate you coming to me in the first place. And, maybe some other time I'll be able to help you out. And maybe you can give them some resources or other ideas to work on. But the bottom line is, you have to really be true to that person in the mirror, and you have to start with liking that person in the mirror yourself. Otherwise, no matter what you do for other people, you're not going to feel any better.
Exactly. And I mean, it sounds like an oxymoron, but the more positive you are, the better your mindset, the more positive you are about your self image, the easier it is to say no. And I know that that sounds odd, that saying no comes from a place of being positive, but it really does. Because you're not simply doing what everybody else wants to try to get along. You're actually putting yourself first. And this is very important. And we touched on this in a way when we were discussing the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where they talk about paying yourself first. Well, this is the same sort of thing, except instead of money, you're talking about time and energy. And you do need to put your needs first, because if you don't have the ability to help anyone else.
Yeah, again, really, really important is whether you say yes or no doesn't guarantee that you will make people feel how they want to feel. You can't predict that up front. And the bottom line is, you can't predict how people are going to feel.
Exactly. So, we talked briefly before going on the air about ways to make it easier to say no. So, Chip, why don't you take us through some of those?
Uh, this was a good one. 5 steps that will make it easy to say no. Step number one is know what's at stake. And the bottom line is, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? It's probably something that's a priority of yours to do that. What are the long term implications and that kind of thing? So you've got to know what's at stake. Number two, if you don't want to answer right now, it's always okay to delay your response. Just say, I need a little bit more time to think about this, and I'll get back to you at a particular point in time. A good one that we talked about that you hadn't heard of and I didn't either, but it makes a whole lot of sense, is using the sandwich technique when you're saying no. And basically, what that is if you have a sandwich, 2 pieces of bread, and then what's in the middle is actually the no. But the pieces of bread are both positive statements. So the first thing is, hey, thanks for reaching out to me. I really, really appreciate you asking me for my help and respecting me enough to do that. Then the meat of the order, the no, is, however, right now I have a very, very full plate, and I really don't want to do this and not come through for you because of that. And then number three would be, I know that you have other resources to do this, and I know that you also have a lot of things that talents yourself where you can conquer this. Keeping in mind that, again, a lot of people are asking you for help so they don't have to do something, and so the situation is like that. But it's always great to start and end with positivity and put the no in the middle. So that's
Yeah,
the
that's
technique. And then once you've done that, you can provide alternative solutions. If somebody's had a negative reaction to that, you can, maybe somebody else that they might ask for help or some resources and so on and so forth. If it's a tech thing online or whatever, basically what you're trying to do is solve the problem for them verbally, so they have other directions to go, which is great. And if worst comes to worst, number five, which is really, really important, is you have to stand firm, protect your own boundaries. If the person can't be satisfied, that's not your problem. It's their own problem, and they're going to have to placate themselves.
All right. Sometimes saying no is simply saying no. Um, and before we went on, I mentioned there is a commercial airing right now from Sundance Television advertising All in the Family reruns. And the clip that they show is Edith asking the question, well, how could I say no to that? And Archie cuts her off the way he always did and said, this way, Edith, no. And the point was, it was just that simple. It was just say no. Sometimes when you hem and haw, people will keep pushing. And if it's something you can't do or simply don't want to do, you have to come out and say no.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, those of you who know Archie Bunker know that he is a very, very extreme case with a lot of
Yes.
and doesn't mind saying that. But using tact like that often is really, really important to do. Not so much like that, but extreme cases. Obviously, that's a great way to get the point across.
Right. And again, something that Chip had mentioned earlier is when you're saying yes to something, because of limited resources, I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. It generally means you're saying no to something else. So you really have to have your priorities down and understand where those priorities lie before you say yes or no to anything. Because you want to be saying no to low priority asks, where if something's a high priority, that's where you want to focus your time and energy.
Yeah, one of the good articles that I read was actually it was entitled "Recognizing a No Moment," and the way that you do this is by asking these different questions, and these could be apropos in a number of different instances. But here are six different questions that you could ask yourself depending on the situation. And the first one is, does this request help me in any way? Obviously, if it doesn't, then you're going to have to consider saying no. The next one is, will this make a big difference to my career if it's work based? Is if somebody's trying to have you do something for them, is it going to help you in the long run? On the home side of things, how will this affect my balance at home? I'm sure that this is a huge one out there where people commit to do things and all of a sudden they're taking time away from their family and their spouse and that kind of thing. And that's not real good either. The next one is really, I think, apropos big time. And it just says, do I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach when I think about saying yes? If you do, then it's probably a good idea to say no. The next one is, will I be mad at myself for saying yes instead of no, which is really just a little bit milder than the last one. And then the last question here is, am I eager to do this at all? Does any of it really appeal to me? And again, if you use some of these things that we talked about before, as far as how to say no, after recognizing that you just have experienced a no moment, put those two things together and it should work for you. But the bottom line is, you do not want to do this if it's not the right thing for you to do. So asking yourself these questions is a great way to figure that out.
Yes, and those last three, they're very important because what they're telling you is that if you say yes, you're actually draining your own energy. You're draining your positivity. You're going to be dreading this. And by extension, most likely putting it off, not doing it well, certainly not giving it your all. And that's not what you want to be doing. If you're saying yes to something, you want to be able to do it well. And quite frankly, you want to be able to do it quickly. If it's something you're putting off or procrastinating because you really didn't want to do it in the first place, you're doing more damage to yourself by saying yes and dragging yourself through this than if you had just said no in the first place.
Yeah. And again, a lot of it depends upon who you're dealing with. I mean, if it's somebody that you really trust and want to help out and so on and so forth, it may be a little bit harder, but it's also a little bit easier to reason with them as far as why you're saying no. If there's somebody else who you know just doesn't want to do it themselves and wants to use everybody, it's a lot easier to answer these questions and say no accordingly. So it's really, really important to look at that and realize that if somebody responds negatively to you saying no, again, there's nothing you can do about that, and you shouldn't let it bother you, even though it's human nature to do so. That's something you have to work on yourself about, but you can't be everything to everybody, no matter how much you want to be. And some people out there are going to shock you in how much they like dealing with you, even if you've said no. And then other people are going to surprise you the other way, and you might do all kinds of things for them and think they're the best person in the world, and they're just going to walk away afterwards and not even thank you.
Right. And, something else for you to keep in mind is that you should really look at the value proposition of what you're being asked. If the cost or the effort to you is a lot less than the value of what you're doing for that person, that really does tip the scale to yes. And sometimes it's as simple as a request. Your grandmother asks you to come over and help out around her house. Well, she can't do it. So the value to her is huge. But you're going over there really isn't any skin off your back. It's simple for you to do, but very difficult for her. So you want to be looking at the value proposition. If it's something that you can do as a matter of course, and it's not really going to stress you out, it's not going to be a problem, absolutely say yes. You don't want to be the person that always says no. You want to save those no's for when they should really be used.
Yeah, and obviously it's a case to case basis, but it does all go back to respecting your time and what you can and what you can't do and what you really want to do.
Absolutely. All right, we're just about out of time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for this week?
Well, it begins with your own foundation, your own personal plan, and your own business plan so that you have your priorities set straight and can ask yourself the questions up front as to whether you should be doing this or saying no. And then obviously learning a few techniques like the sandwich method as far as how to handle people with that. It's important to do that too. But the bottom line is you have to respect your time and you have to respect what you're looking to do. And obviously, what other people think of you, you can't do anything about that. So you got to kind of stick to your guns as far as that goes. And you're going to have a whole lot happier and managed life by doing so. There's a whole lot of advantages to saying no.
Yes, I think that for me, the big takeaway is that saying no has more to do with your relationship with yourself than it does with your relationship with the person you're saying yes or no to. It's about knowing what you're good at, what you can do, what your time looks like, and is it something you can fit into your schedule or not, and how you feel about yourself in terms of self-esteem. So the better you understand yourself, the more comfortable you are saying no. And that's something to remember because people who say yes to everything rarely get all of it done. That's something to think about. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can find us at the iTunes Store, the Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.